Okay, let's get started. Thank you all for being here today. Just a few, before we dive in, just a few administrative things. Since we're kicking off this new task force, new committee. First off, please hold, if you have any questions, please hold them to the end, and then we'll try to address any questions. Let me just suggest, Kate, if you and Ben, where is Ben? Is he here? I thought he was here. If you guys want to sit, oh, here's Ben. So if you guys want to sit up here in the front, I think that if there are any issues that come up that concern you, it would just be easier. So let me invite you up there. I am Elliot Olczak, the chair of this committee. And let me spend a few moments just introducing the committee. The agenda for today, everyone should have in their packet. Our main goal today is really to just introduce our committee. I do want to give a quick shout out. This has been a goal of I think the towns for many years now, and the idea of doing this, the focus on this work has been percolating for many years. I want to give just a quick shout out to Leslie Moriarty, the former chair of the Democratic Caucus, who really made a big effort on this particular topic. But I'm going to start off by just making some quick introductions on who's on the committee, define our mission statement, and then talk about our goals a little. And I hope most of the, or at least half the presentation, will be Agnes, who's our budget director, who will be talking about the model and the framework that we're going to be using for planning. Again, my background, I have a little background in the municipal business. I started my career off at Goldman Sachs, and I rose to run the Muni desk for a little while there. We have a really great group of people. Let me start with Sally. Sally also is a Muni person, perfect for this committee. She has experience at both Morgan Stanley and Wells Fargo as a municipal banker, really knows the business inside out, and I'm really looking forward to working with you and your contribution. Joe Pellegrino, to my immediate left, really is obviously the chair of the Republican caucus, been involved in the town for many, many years, is a former BET member, has both intelligence and historical perspective. Full disclosure, I know Joe for over 20 years personally, and think he's terrific, and really looking forward to working with you as well.
Thanks, Elliot.
Stephen Selbst, again, I think, by way of background, perfect background. Stephen, as far as I know, I think is the only practicing lawyer on the full BET, so we're really lucky. And his specialty, he's a partner at a major New York law firm. He co-heads their restructuring business, is intimately familiar with the issues regarding compliance, financial compliance, that is. Couldn't think of a better partner in this endeavor. And then, very briefly, everyone should know Kate Bush, who is the town administrator. Joan Lynch, who is the town's chief financial officer, and recently reappointed, I guess, this morning, Agnes Cowie, who is the budget director, and then finally Ben Branyan, who is the chief financial and administrative officer of Greenwich Public Schools. So, and I hope all of you will be regular participants in our committee. So let me tell you all quickly what our mission is, and let me just start off by saying very broadly, very simply, what we're really trying to do is bring transparency, clarity, and more involvement with capital projects and with debt policy to the community, and utilize this information that we have already, and we're going to refine to plan to do a better job planning for the town. So let me just read these statements quickly. Our mission is, and let me back up one moment and say, everything I'm talking about today, although we're an hour into the new session, the four of us have met, and this has been a collaborative effort, and so this is all not me speaking alone. It's really, I'm speaking on behalf of all of my colleagues on the committee. So first off, to assure capital projects that have been identified by the town are incorporated in pro forma planning models and reasonable estimates. Now, let me just pause for a moment and say, let me give you some subtlety here. So in the past, we had identified some projects that we didn't include in planning. And Dorothy Hamill-Rink is a good example. So we had identified that as a project that we thought was going to get done at a certain point, but we carried that at zero, and which we felt was not realistic. And now I'm really pleased to say that everybody on this committee agrees that no, that's not the right way to do it. We're going to put an estimate. That estimate may change. It may be 5 million too low, maybe 5 million too high, but we know it's not zero. And for planning purposes, it's much more helpful to have a more robust number. Second, to evaluate open capital projects appropriated but not bonded. So we are going to be identifying projects that have already been approved, already been funded, but not all the money has been spent, and we're going to be identifying those projects and making sure that either the money is going to get spent or it gets returned to our coffers. To recommend strategic revisions to the capital plan that supports the successful delivery of capital project objectives while ensuring full compliance with BET and the state of Connecticut debt policy guidelines. So this is a really important function. We need to be in compliance with these policies. And the only way we're going to know whether we're in compliance is if we utilize better data, better estimates for future projects. And then finally, to recommend that the BET adopt a capital projects planning process, which my colleague Joe here has labeled the CP3, as opposed to CP3PO. The CP3 policy and forward it to the full board for approval. The CP3 policy will define the life cycle of capital projects from initial identification to incorporating them into the 10-year capital plan, prioritizing and funding projects through the BET, including project closeout and reimbursement. So what we're going to do by the end of this process, we are going to try to put in place sort of best practices, a plan for how to go about this whole process. Now, let me also clarify and say it is not the purview of this committee to approve or disapprove of any particular project. That's the purview of the broad BET. Those projects will come up in the normal course of business, and the BET will either approve or disapprove of those projects. Again, our goal is to sort of shed more light on capital projects in general and the whole process of bringing the capital projects into the budget. So the plan all starts with the first selectman. Next slide, please, Leo. The plan starts. We're not inventing this stuff. We're taking it from the first selectman's budget, and as you know, the first selectman goes out to all of the departments, and this is a bottom-up approach. That process is run by Kate Bush through CIP sheets, which are capital projects sheets that each of the departments submit through Kate that get populated into the budget. Next page, please. So shortly, I'm going to turn this over to Agnes, who will show you really an introduction, the very basics of how the model works. And she'll start off by showing 10 years of pro forma statements, which are populated again from the information that Kate is collecting. We are going to try, incidentally, to tweak, to fine-tune that information to better reflect the disbursements over time. So one of the things we're on slide 6, Leo. One of the things that I think we can do a better job at is indicating when a project is likely to start, and then how many years it will take to disperse that money. That's important for a variety of reasons, just cash flow reasons, most importantly, but also we need to comply with, if we're bonding for that debt, we need to comply with what are called municipal arbitrage regulations, so we're not in violation. So we have to follow the law, and in order to do that, we've got to do a better job in planning. Okay, let's turn to page 7, and I'm just going to give some highlights and then turn it over to Agnes. So we're going to get into, Agnes is going to talk about the model, and as I mentioned, she's going to show 10 years of financial planning, and then she's going to dive into just the next year so everyone sees the flow of funds, how cash sort of flows through our system with regard to capital projects. We're not talking about the operating budget. We're simply talking about capital projects. And then the ultimate goal is for people to have a better appreciation of the debt policy guidelines and then as well the credit rating agency guidelines. One of the goals of the BET broadly and of our committee in particular is that the town maintain a AAA rating. And so we want to look at, we want to make sure that we're not doing anything that may violate or even hint at violating a trigger that a rating agency would become concerned with. So with that, just turn to page 8 briefly. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Agnes, and I just would say this model is going to help us in so many ways. And I'm really encouraged that everyone is embracing this. When I say everyone, I don't mean just our committee, but the town finance staff, the broader BET. We're embracing looking at the model to help us evaluate the key variables, and some of which I list on page 8. We want to see, how does this affect our mill rate? There are certain things that we can do. We can raise the mill rate by raising the capital tax levy or a special assessment, but we can also change the debt terms. Extending the debt terms has one effect on the mill rate. Shortening the debt terms has another, et cetera. So with that, let me turn it over to Agnes, who will touch on the model.
Thank you. Thank you, Leo. Good morning. I'm Agnes Kawai, Budget Director for the Town of Greenwich. Today, I'll be presenting the funding schedule model for the capital plan. Data reflected in these slides is for the current fiscal year 2026. The first selectman is scheduled to present his budget on January 27th. So by the next committee meeting, this committee's meeting on February 18th, we will have the updated data based on the first selectman's recommendations. So this first slide offers a snapshot of the current year's capital plan extending over the next 10 years. As previously mentioned, the data reflected here are for the current fiscal year. This slide provides an overview of the funding schedule model, which should be familiar to most. It's included in the budget book, with some additional line items specifically added for this committee's use, such as adjustments to town or school capital and construction inflation. Each relevant line item has been assigned an alphabetical identifier on the left side for easier reference. I'll now walk through each one and provide a brief explanation. A and C is the town and school capital requests respectively. B and D, adjustment to town and school capital, specifically added again to this committee's use. This may reflect changes such as additions, deletions, or deferral of requests for future years. E is the interim projects or appropriations approved during the fiscal year. F, again, another line item added for this committee's use is construction inflation. G, capital projects, adds up A through F. H, bond acquisition cost and band interest. I'm presenting the formula on this slide, though it will be further refined as we progress. In the past, band interest has been so low that we've used a multiplier of 3 to conservatively estimate the cost, but we will be refining that to account for current environment. I is total request, which is the capital projects plus the band acquisition cost and band interest. General fund contribution to sewer, this is based on sewer's funding schedule, which closely mirrors this funding schedule. Transfer from capital non-recurring, which is determined by the BET. Reimbursements from school and bridge projects respectively, L&M. These require input from the controller, finance department, and any relevant departments, which is school and DPW. Total transfers and reimbursements is the sum of J through M. Net capital costs is the total capital requests less the total transfers and reimbursements. P&Q is the principal and interest payments for the current fiscal year and is based on the debt schedule. Total debt service is principal plus interest. Total financing requirements is the net capital cost plus the debt service. Capital tax levy is determined by the BET. Borrowings excess revenues is the capital tax levy minus the total financing requirements. A negative amount signifies the amount to finance or borrow. Please keep this number in mind, the $27,691,000, as I will be referencing that later on in the discussion of the BET policy guidelines. V is the bond interest, which is used to calculate the acquisition cost, and W is the bond interest rate that we are assuming, which is used to calculate the interest payments for future years. So this slide shows the capital requests for the current fiscal years broken down between the town and the schools. The town table is broken down by departments, and I'm only listing projects over $1 million and grouping the rest under the all others category. For the fiscal year 2026, the town had 59 projects totaling $25,216,000, and the schools had 21 projects totaling $18,626,000. Principal and interest and total debt service, I'm relisting it on this slide because in the model, this is where we actually have the detailed calculation for the principal and interest calculation. Outstanding debt general fund section, these are based on the debt schedules. Outstanding debt lists the debt for general fund, Nathaniel Witherall, and sewers, again, based on debt schedules. The final section covers the BET policy guidelines, which I'll provide more detail on in the last slide. The debt policy states for number one, the town shall finance a minimum of 10% of its capital projects appropriated in a given year, net of expected related reimbursements with cash generated from the capital tax levy in that same year. Capital tax levy is defined as that portion of the town's property taxes designated to fund A, debt service, payable to the town's general fund, and B, a portion of the capital expenditures. I'm showing the relevant formula in calculating the percentage of projects funded by the capital tax levy. What this means is that 38.7% of the total capital requests is funded by the capital tax levy, which amounts to $17,512,000 in actual dollars. So if you recall, the $27,691,000 funded by borrowings or the financing is really the difference between the $45,203,000 and the $17,512,000. The second BET policy is the town shall maintain a net debt to the most recent grand list of no more than 0.75%. Grand list is defined on the debt policy as the full market value of the taxable real estate, motor vehicles, and personal property as certified by the tax assessor. Again, I'm showing the relevant formula. This ratio measures the debt burden relative to the town's property value. The state of Connecticut doesn't set a single mandatory debt or to grand list ratio, but recommends keeping it under 3%, which we are on this policy. Third policy is the town shall maintain a ratio of debt service to total expenses of no more than 11%. Again, I'm showing the relevant formula. This ratio gives an indication of how much of the town's operating budget is used to pay off debt. So that's the last slide. So if the committee has any questions or comments, I'll be happy to address. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to Joan Lynch for the discussion of credit ratings guidelines.
So I'm not going to get into the specific guidelines at this time, but this is something, as Mr. Alchek mentioned that we will be following along, but just to give an overview, the rating agencies use a scorecard, and one of the credit factors is debt and related ratios. For Moody's, it's a 30% weight, and for S&P, it's a 20% weight. So as Mr. Alchek explained, we will be working closely with Bill Lindsay, our financial advisor, with any types of changes, and he's aware of this committee's re-engagement. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Leo, if you would just go back to slide 9. And then I'll summarize. So slide 9 is just the future meetings that we have planned. I just want to state the obvious here. Today we've talked about information that has already been in the public domain. There's nothing new that we've hit on here. We really haven't started our work yet. What we're doing today is really introducing the committee and what our plans are. But all the data that Agnes just reviewed was from 25-26. That budget's already in place. None of the new work that we are going to do has been started yet. And so let's turn to the final page, which is what are our goals for our next meeting, and where do we go from here? So the first thing that we're going to address is, as I mentioned earlier, working with Kate, tweaking the request that we're for information as we evaluate projects. So when a project gets submitted by a department, by GPS, we're going to ask them to include what's the start date, what are the disbursements, expected disbursements over a period of time. They may not know exactly, right? This is an estimate, but having some type of information is better than nothing. And so what we're going to try to do is get an indication for what those cash flows will look like over time so we can evaluate. Some of that will average out. One project will come in earlier, one project will come in later, and I think after you include a portfolio of capital projects, the information will be much more valuable than we're using now. So that's the first thing we're going to do. That's going to entail a fair amount of work, frankly. We're going to break down into subgroups and meet with all of the departments to explain what we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve over the coming few weeks, and to help each department fulfill that goal. We're not trying to burden any of the departments. This is a minimal additional information that we're asking for. So once we get that information, then we're going to do a couple of things. One is we're going to aggregate that list and share it with the public, right? That's always been public information, but we're going to try to do perhaps a better job at making sure that the public knows what those numbers look like, and I think incrementally, importantly, we're going to be assigning. We're not going to be eliminating projects like Dorothy Hamill Rink or the new project at Greenwich High School for the pool. We're going to put, we're going to put a number down. Now, understanding that those numbers are estimates and may change. They may go up, they may go down, right? That is not in any way an amount that the BET has approved. That's not that's not used for the BET is not going to necessarily approve that amount. If we put 60 million down for some project, the BET may say no. We're going to turn that down. But this is going to help us in planning so that we know that we're not going to violate debt policy guidelines. We're not going to get in trouble with our rating, et cetera. It's just good financial planning to have an estimate. So we will distribute the list of townwide capital projects once that process is complete in the regular cycle of the budget, and that is expected to be, in the next month, certainly 2 months. So with that concludes the presentation. If there are any questions for any of us, we're happy to take questions. I guess one last thing to say. What is the role of the public here? And there will be an opportunity for the public to play a role, just like there has already been when we'll have public hearings on whether they be Greenwich Public School capital projects or townwide capital projects. The public will have an opportunity to comment on those. Again, the objective here is to be more transparent and have more community involvement. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions anyone might have.
My name is Brooks Harris. I'm on the RTM Finance Committee. I was involved in the last go-round of the debt policy meeting, and so I have some history here, and I think significant progress has been made since that time. So I want to congratulate you on that. The two areas of comments I have are, one, I encourage you to consider legacy procedures that may need adjustment given other changes you're thinking of. And specifically what I'm talking about is the policy guidelines. These policy guidelines were year-by-year evaluations that were meant as guidelines or guardrails for a budget that was fairly static over the last 10 or 15 years. Over the last 5 years or so, we've moved to a budget which involves much more aggressive investment in our schools and our towns, and these cannot be evaluated as easily on a year-by-year basis. So in other words, the guidelines we put in place to keep us on track year by year may need to be violated, I shouldn't say violated, but may need to be changed in the context of evaluating multi-year investments. So as you move to relying on the multi-year model more, you may consider the guidelines need to be multi-year as well. And the analogy I would use for those who work in the finance business, which seems to be most of you, is it would be like valuing an LBO using a PE multiple as opposed to using a discounted cash flow model. It just wouldn't work. And so I think you'll find that your job is a lot easier if you move to a series of policy guidelines that consider the new framework for which you're evaluating capital investment. The other legacy item I would focus on is, as we move from no investment in sewers to tremendous investment in sewers, one thing that hasn't gotten noticed so much is it adds a tremendous amount to the amount being funded by taxes. And I would encourage you to think of, it was just $1 million a year or something before, and that was nothing, that was easy. As it moves into 5, and I suspect much more than 5 going forward, you may consider whether you want that burden to be funded by the people who are using the sewers as opposed to the town. That may make it easier for the townwide investments such as the pool and the schools that we're renovating as you go through this process. The second area of comment I want to make was on the 10-year horizon you're looking at here. And I understand that the crystal ball gets more cloudy as you go out farther and farther. But in capital budgeting, there's certain things that are crystal clear 10, 15, 20, 25 years out. For instance, if I borrow debt today, I know I'm going to have to pay it back when that debt matures. And if I have certain capital projects, large chunky ones that I can identify, well, I don't know exactly how much they'll cost. I can have some estimate of what they may be. And the point I want to make is, while you may collect a 10-year CIP, the projection boundary for your model should be at least 15, 20, or 25 years, because it's essential that if you take on debt in year 7, you have some way of recognizing the fact that that debt needs to be repaid. Otherwise, you get into a situation where your model seems to indicate that everything is good because the bad stuff is in the years that are outside the framework of the model. So even if you collect a 10-year CIP, I encourage you to use 15, 20, or 25 years. Now, you may say, well, our crystal ball isn't good enough. Again, many of the items that have true impact on the model can be seen pretty clearly in the crystal ball. But secondly, the way to deal with that cloudiness is not by cutting the model off, but rather by running sensitivity analysis. So if we decide maybe we don't want to spend $40 million on a pool, but we want to renovate it for 10, what impact does that have? Or if we decide to push a project out from year 8 to year 12, what impact does that have? And the final thing I'll say about that is, particularly if you consider issuing longer-term debt, a 10-year horizon is grossly insufficient for evaluating that kind of funding. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions, Brooke. And it sounds like you care about planning. You care about this process, which is terrific. So let me just ask if Joe would like to address
You don't have to respond to
your
those
first
questions today.
Well, I think this is a really important issue, and I think we all believe in planning. We all believe in financial planning. And so I think what you're asking about, particularly with regard to guidelines and guardrails, is really sort of the point of what we're doing is we want to make sure, but, I don't know, Joe, if you want to say a few words.
Happy to. So I think on your first point, Brooke, I would say, I think what you're really asking us to do is to be reflective of all our options and all tools that we have to work with to try to make the capital projects work on a timely basis at the lowest all-in cost to the taxpayer. That's what I hear.
And risk.
Right. And so I would say, I think, I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but I would say we are absolutely going to be open-minded to looking at all alternatives, all tools that we have to figure out what is the optimum capital model. What the word I'm going to emphasize is model, because we can be really focused in on the next year, which is what we're going to appropriate. What we want to do is try to get the best handle on where the projects are, what the real costs are, what the real timing is, and what our real needs are going to be to finance them, whether it's through the capital levy or through debt. So your first point, thank you for raising it, and I want you to be assured that we're totally open-minded to what we've got to look at in order to make this work.
So
That's my first
Yeah, thank you. Let me just add one small thing to that, that we're also focused on. This actually gets back to the CIP sheets, is we're going to think about what's the duration of the asset, right? We're going to think about the duration of the asset and the duration of the liability. And so, some assets are not appropriate for long-term financing. HVAC, well, it depends upon what type of HVAC, I guess. So, certain assets are not appropriate for long-term financing, but others that, have a 50-year life are more appropriate. And we're going to be looking at that information as we evaluate the financial plan that we're ultimately trying to optimize a variety of factors, the mill rate, debt terms, et cetera. So.
I'll just add
Yeah.
one other point. On your second point, I believe, and I'm flying without vision on this, I believe we have a debt repayment model that does go out more than 10 years. It goes out to the length of whatever we're borrowing, which includes the sewer borrowings.
Yes.
So we're not blind after 10 years. Whether or not we populate what are the capital expectations after 10 years, open-minded to be discussed, but I don't want the public to think that we don't have a model that is very, very explicit to what is our debt burden out to the end of the latest maturity. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
May I add some other comments?
Please.
Just to digress for a moment. First, thank you for the kickoff. Great overview. I think we're off to a flying start. I like to be explicit about what the public and what we can expect over the next month. And I think the most important thing is at the end of the month, we'll have the presentation from the First Selectman's office, the First Selectman, on his capital projects for the next 10 years. So we'll have that. And the second thing we'll have at the end of the month is the grand list will be revised and in the model so that when Agnes put up that first slide of the 10-year numbers, that should not be taken as the 10-year numbers yet, because it's all going to be subject to change once we get Fred's numbers and once we get the grand list populated in there appropriately, then we'll actually have something at the end of the month that is, here's what we're looking at, as opposed to right now. I just want to get that there. The other thing, I think by the end of the month, we'll start the process of closeouts of capital that's been appropriated, but it's not been used for X period of times, and that we want to get a handle on that. So I think those are the three concrete steps that the public can expect, we should expect of ourselves between now and our next meeting in February. That's it.
Great.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think that's it.
Okay. Okay.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for being here today. With that, the meeting is adjourned.